Thank you. Thank you for that feedback, Ken. Something that I think about is like after school programs. My brother-in-law is one of the creators of the thing called Project Art. He lives in New York City, and it is an after-school arts program that's done in libraries that is giving students the ability who don't really always have, and it's not just in New York, it's in many cities around the country, but it's helping people, students have ability to have access to art in the workplace, in schools, when they might not have access to it, and expression and so on and so forth. So that made me think about that. Okay.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
schools are special places.
yes.
And I don't just say that as a son of educators.
Yeah, I mean, learning is great, in so many different ways. Lee, did you have anything else to add or any responses to what we were just talking about?
I'm just noodling on how we might introduce. I guess I'm already jumping ahead to how we might introduce ethical dilemma topics and loneliness and privacy and data topics to younger cohort. Also, I was just jotting down in my notes that elementary school kiddos and middle school kiddos and high school kiddos are like obviously three different buckets, three different developmental stages. Even in elementary school, I'd say you could probably break it down even further because there's so much development happening in the early years. They really make huge leaps, like huge conceptual leaps early on. And then of course teenagers, like whatever grown-ups think is cool, they think is completely, uncool, and that adults have no idea what they're talking about. So so I was just noodling on the cohort or the demographics that we might be working to serve. But besides all that, I mean, this brainstorm was great, and yeah, the more the merrier in terms of brainstorming feedback. I think it's all fine. I just thinking ahead to how would we break up students, pre-college students, because that's a big demographic.
Right. Yeah. And so another consideration, thank you for that feedback, Lee. I'm also thinking about speaking from myself. I do not have children and I don't get access, and I'm not in the K-12 space. I'm like adjacent to it. I'm helping teachers overcome burnout is one of the things that I do. So I personally don't have children or engage with children a lot, except for my nieces and nephews. And so what I'm thinking about also is like, what is our sweet spot for us when we're talking about criteria for us as we do this work? Because I think of the Ikigai framework. Have you all heard of the Ikigai, like the reason for being framework? I think about like two parts of like what is, and there's two sides of it. There's 4 Venn diagrams. One of them is like what are looking at us and what are we good at, and what are and also what do we like to do or want to do on one side of the spectrum. And then the other side, I think about what does the world need and what can we get paid for? And obviously, we're doing this because we want people to think more ethical dilemmas wise and like the social aspects of this. But this just popped into my head as we were talking of like, do we want to be creating something for kids and students, or do we want to, is that the right people we want to be working with? And do we have the expertise or engagement in that for us to actually hit in, zoom in on, like we talked about loneliness and mental health, Lee, or like, I don't know a lot about this, right? And so we would have to engage like other experts to come in to work with us on that, or, you know, to do a lot of.
I personally feel more comfortable working towards a design or solution or product or service for as old of children as possible, because I feel like the younger ones, it does require some expertise in terms of like developmental stages and things like that. Even though I have kids of my own, I just feel like I don't remember you know, what they're receptive to at what age, and like what's appropriate for them to be exposed to when, you know. All I remember is that when it comes to little children, obviously things need to be couched in terms that they understand, and then parents are always advised only to answer questions to the extent that the children ask, and like no further than that, you know. So like you try to be open and honest with a young child, you answer their questions. Like I'm just thinking in the context of ethical dilemmas or difficult topics or conversations. They ask the question, then they reach their limit. You don't expose them past their limit, I guess. And then older kids, like I am already seeing what my 9th grader is being asked in school, and they're already talking about, you know, their identity, their sexuality, their mental health, their intersectionalities. And then also, you know, they're being asked to weigh in and analyze world history, social, political, ethical, you know, those kinds of things. Sometimes they don't sound very coherent, and sometimes, you know, they're still immature, and obviously they think more in black and white than in shades of gray, but they're getting there, you know, like they're already starting to develop their adult mindset, I guess. So I feel like so basically, you know, for me, if I had a choice, or if I would place my bets or votes, then I would do like definitely high school and as old as possible. So like, you know, juniors, seniors, basically, you know, kids, students, almost adults that are deep into forming their identities and their ethical values, you know, their values and their ethics and stuff like that. I mean, there's something to say for trying to touch the heart and the mind of a very young person, because they're obviously more moldable at that age. But you know, I don't know, like it's their parents, their religious institutions, their teachers, coaches, like those are who's shaping them. You know, I'd say it would be awesome to touch the mind and the heart of a very young person. I just think it's harder. Like, yeah.
Right. And we didn't go to school to study. You know, it's
like child development, or how a child's mind is shaped, or how their values are imprinted, and they're very imprintable early on. I just, you know, don't know.
Yeah.
They're capable of memorizing so much when they're young, but only if it's like super fun. Like, you know, Pokemon data, like they'll memorize everything on a Pokemon data, you know, a Pokemon card. They'll memorize that front to back, like as early as 4 or 5.
Right.
But if it's something that they don't understand or they're not into, like they're not going to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's reminding me of like just the cascading effects of influence and peer pressure. And I think, I mean, I think for folks that like study kind of culture and just understanding the nuance of how culture spreads, I feel like as much as it can feel like a gap from us to like younger high schoolers, for example, sometimes it could probably feel like an even greater chasm for us to like the folks who look up to high schoolers. So in a way, maybe by reaching high schoolers to design with that in mind, based on the premise that like maybe there's limited exposure to tech and ethics in that space, like you're kind of giving them scenarios to play off of, which then may make it more attractive as a subject area for folks who come for Gen Alpha, or whatever comes after Gen Alpha. But yeah, so maybe like that's the opportunity to then like use this as a bridge to create a resource for high schoolers, which then can be like redesigned or remixed for younger folks based off of how those high schoolers might engage with this game, with this practice, to make it like malleable and adaptable in ways that they might see fit to kind of spread further. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. I like
There's
that.
also a difference between designing a game and designing behavior change in existing user experiences. Like I can think of several behavior change UX systems, like, injecting moments of pause or moments of guided meditation or moments of teaching and learning about ethics, tech ethics, interspersed in a child's typical digital life, but that's like veering into more behavior change systems and like gamifying what they already use versus just a standalone game that is separate from their current digital stream or digital life. So,
Hmm.
uh, you know,
Right.
I think that's the UX designer in me, like coming out going like, oh, how can we, subconsciously or what's that word? The word is escaping me. Subliminal, subliminal ways of behavior change in existing user experiences versus just designing a cool game, a fun game for a certain demographic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just capturing what you're all saying. So I think that makes sense for like high school students as like our main target audience.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's all these people are already starting to think about their identity and sexuality, values, and mental health. This
Mm-hmm.
could be also something that we're not designing for first, like, but an adult could pick up and do and look
Mm-hmm.
deeper because they haven't been taught ethics in tech.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Just like I like to pick up books for high schoolers, like, I have an AI textbook at home that's meant for middle and high school students, but I love it because it's written, in that kind of Feynman way, simple, and yet it's a complex topic. You
mhm.
can learn so much from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think we have pretty, we're designing for this first for high school students and like, the offering from Lee was junior and seniors, like in that realm. Do you think that we have enough, Lee, for us to move into archetypes personas?
I hope so. I think so. I mean,
Okay.
I think the three of us can step back in
Mhm.
time that far and also just think about the teenagers that we know. And
Yeah,
also, if we don't know, we could just record the questions that we have. I'm sure we're going to
yeah,
have questions too. So,
great.
mm.
Okay, Lee, do you want to take the reins or metaphorically and also physically, but and like lead and share your screen, or do you want me to share my screen while you lead a discussion?
Yeah, I'm happy to share the screen. I'm
Okay.
also happy to take actually, I can edit. I can edit from
Okay.
my mural. So let me just
Okay.
see if I can.
Um, so do you want me to share, you want to share your screen then? I can give you the access to do it.
Yeah, so you're going to give me Zoom control, right?
Yeah, I will. Yeah. Let me just stop my share so that we can be looking at the same thing you're looking at. So,
Okay, so I clicked share screen, but it says host disabled
yep,
participant
you
screen
should
sharing. So
have access.
you're gonna enable it, right?
Yeah, you have it. It's enabled now. So,
Okay, so we're gonna go to Google Chrome, which is what I'm using. Oh, it says allow Zoom to share. How come it's not? by default. Did I turn that off? Hold on. Okay, let me.
Does that empower? Ooh, a kid's book about diversity. Maybe this is going to turn into a kid's book. A kid's book about boredom. A kid's book about ethics and tech.
Oh yeah.
Y'all, unfortunately, I have to quit and reopen, so I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Okay.
All good.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, curious to how that becomes, it's funny, like you start with high schoolers in mind, and then you're like, well, the simpler you make it, the more accessible you make it, then
Yeah.
perhaps the more resonant it becomes. So what that journey looks like.
Yeah. I love this. Yeah, this is the first time I'm being exposed to that. And I also, the kid's book about empathy, I'm going to have to like see that and learn from that. There's also,
Hi there. Hi, Ken, are you sharing a bunch of kids' books or are you just finding a bunch, Amy, when you're searching?
oh, no, the link that, Ken was sharing.
Ken is sharing, yeah.
Yeah, it's a book called, it's a company called A Kids Co, and they write a bunch of like books for kids of different ages around topics like, empathy, diversity, design.
Okay, cool.
Pronouns.
Well, absolutely. Tech ethics, they need that one for sure.
Yeah.
Actually,
Like more simple we can make it, like if we can describe this to a 4-year-old, like, and like why it's important, that's.
Wait, this is a thing?
yeah, I think I shared this already, but let me share it again.
Wow.
We have this one at home.
Okay. Okay, this is the thing.
Wow.
Lee, I'm gonna need to go get some more water, but I'm in within reach of all of you, so you can
Okay.
go forth and conquer. I'll be back.
All right, Ken, you can see my screen, right? We're on the
Yep.
archetype one. Okay,
Yep.
awesome.
Here's a tip, Lee, to go into focus mode where you can actually just focus on, get rid of all the pieces on the bottom right-hand corner. There's that little thing, takes you to focus mode, and then you can X out the highlight votes too. On the right, top right, yeah. So it helps you focus.
Okay, great. What about this one here? What's this?
That shows up
Oh,
whenever you
I'm
click on
Bob.
something. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so what we found, Amy and I, is we found templates through Mural that are persona templates. And then we did a little bit of research on the difference between archetypes and personas. They're very, very similar. Archetypes just keep things more generic and don't personalize anything. So, a persona, like especially in marketing, they'll give that persona a name. Debbie Downer, she's the depressed one who goes shopping for, I don't know, whatever like that, and get as personal and realistic as possible. Whereas an archetype depersonalizes and keeps things very like archetypal or iconic or like that. And so Amy and I agreed that just keeping it at the archetype level, at least in the beginning, is probably the way to go, especially like there's so many identities and intersectionalities that we might want to serve. It would be really premature to like pin down anybody like that specifically. So just keep it really archetypal. But of course, like if there's certain underserved communities or communities that we really want to hone in on, obviously we can get that more specific later, depending on the need and who we want to serve. But in the beginning, let's brainstorm a little bit about a typical high school student. And I just threw this out there just to get the conversation going. The short description of a high school student is that they're shaping their ethical identity. This is open to being changed, obviously. And then the template, you know, we didn't customize this. This is just the template that was given to us. This is fine in the beginning. We don't really have to, I don't think, split hairs too much about the parts of a persona just yet, but these are just good conversation starters, brainstorm starters. So let's just review them. Situation and context. What is the typical context of, you know, we could just say a real
Welcome, Di.
high school student represented by this archetype, right? And we could spend a couple minutes adding text to that. Goals and motivations. Beyond our product and service, what motivates a high school student? Fears and frustration. Again, like why when we do persona analysis, like why do we answer these questions? Well, because we want to really get want to peel back the onion and get to the motivations of a person that we're trying to serve. And so it's really good to just get a little deeper. We're not psychoanalysts, obviously, but you know, just through our life experience, we can describe these. Fears and frustrations. So what keeps a high school student up at night?
Lee, one thing I'm wondering is, do we want to specifically say design for a high school junior or a high school senior?
Yeah, we could. I mean, a high school senior is gonna be their motivations are gonna be pretty different from a high school freshman for sure. High school freshman trying to figure out high school, trying to figure out their order in the high school or whatever learning environment they in. I suppose they could be homeschooled as well. And then high school seniors, obviously, they're thinking about what the hell they're going to do after high school. So I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you want to think about the budding adult or the young high schooler, the younger high schooler? A junior is smack in the middle. They're going to be their hardest year, I think, a junior. So I don't know.
Yeah, there's part of me that's like the high school junior is at that crux where like they've got the lived experience a little bit under their belt relative to high school years, but they're not the like slightly jaded / one trick pony. I got to get myself out of high school mentality. So there's like still a little bit of limberness to what they might be receptive to, which I think can bode well for audience.
True. Even kids who were never studious or had no interest in succeeding in school at all, by 11th and 12th grade, they're probably thinking a little bit more about it too. So it could do a high school junior. That gives us some wiggle room.
Yeah, I think the more specific we can get, the better, you know, when we're talking about who we're designing for this for. So I agree with you.
And future.
Because in junior year, if I recall correctly, that's where you're like, I'm making decisions for what I'm doing after college, after high school, if I'm going to college or not. Like, and I don't think college is the default, right? But like, what is my life going to look like after my, you know?
Exactly. Even if you're not, you're probably answering certain questions at this point. Or you might even be working at this point.
True.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So I guess the situation and context.
Yeah.
The whole context of a senior. Well, one of the context we decided was like, are we brainstorming this as a group or are we going to individually?
Oh, I'm just reviewing each
Okay.
group then, and then we're gonna go back and I'd say give each other like 1 or 2 minutes to add and
Okay.
then talk about, yeah.
Got it.
Okay, the tasks and tactics. What does a high school junior do to accomplish their goals? So what does a high school junior do to accomplish their goals? Okay.
All right.
So, and then this we'll try to maybe finish up the brainstorm with this. We can all take a stab at what a typical quote might be from that. Okay, situation and context. What is the typical context of a real high school junior represented by this archetype? So if we can, everybody has the opportunity to edit this, right?
Mhm. Everybody should.
Okay, great. So just add 1 or 2 contexts in the next 2 minutes or so,
Mhm.
and then we can talk about it.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, you guys want 1 more minute?
I think I'm good.
Okay. So I took the context question pretty literally, like where are they, like where do they spend their hours? Like, what locations are they in? But they also have an emotional context, obviously, yes. and a mental context. So, all right, Amy, do you want to talk about a couple of the ones that you added?
Yeah, I was thinking about the emotional context of like,
Yeah.
because my niece is thinking about them because they essentially announced they're 16 now, but they announced that they're like, hey, by the way, I changed my name. My name's Goldrin. I go by they, them. And also, by the way, I'm gay and I don't ever want to have sex. Like they announced that like 2 years ago. And I'm like, I'm channeling Goldrin right now. And I was like, wow, that was an email to the whole family, right? I was like, and then just last week they were diagnosed with autism. And so which gives a lot of context to things. So I'm just like channeling Goldrin right now, where I'm like, wow, like they're navigating their identity and sexuality, anxiety and depression is there. They might be getting, you know, like diagnoses about a lot of different things about anxiety and depression. They could be impressionable. They're also hormones are raging at this time. And I'm also watching Sex Education right now. And so So that's popping into my head too, is like the
So a
hormone.
lot of it's a lot of identity context.
Yeah, that's the context that I have. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I have a little one, and his older sister has now asked to be renamed and referred to as they them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
the thing.
Her name was Abigail, and they want to be called Gail now.
Oh, I like that.
Okay, great. Ken, which couple did you add here?
Yeah, I mean, I think Amy touched on some of them. They were more contextual, but the self-confidence, because I think inherent in like situations that emerge, kind of how folks operate from a place of confidence determines what the decision tree looks like. Um, navigating pressure. I originally said peer pressure, but I was like, our family members, peers. So just navigating pressure, students and family. Um, and, uh, you know, definitely a sense of impressionability, just kind of being your circle, is that a tight circle? Are you in a circle? Do you want to be in a circle? Kind of being a framework for, I was just thinking about like pathways, like what are things that lead to kind of potentially divergent pathways that could then be infused with like a tech ethics lens because it's rooted in how someone is feeling about a thing, or um, navigating and thinking through the steps that they even feel they are available to them while navigating a thing, whether justified or kind of more psychological. Yeah.
While you were talking, I just remembered that students are also developing their political identities too, and they may be doing activism for the first time, either just like their parents did or in rebellion to their parents. Like, some families are quite politically active and others are very controversy averse or conflict averse. And so then that age group, either does it to rebel or does it to support their family. So political identity is also coming out, and that kind of relates a little bit more to ethics, tech ethics, because there's laws and policies and stuff that a student might start activating for or agitating for. So
I just
I
saw,
add, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I just saw a post actually this morning that Harvard apparently added to their criteria. I don't want to misstate, but to their criteria around identity, Harvard had added, what did they say? 1 second while I pull it up. Uh, political beliefs are listed now under protected categories, under bullying and discrimination policy. So yeah, just the expansive, as that becomes more expansive, and then like what is contained
Yeah.
within.
Yeah, exactly. Like it becomes more consequential what you believe or what you state out loud. And also, as youth are being more educated through the systems about things like bias, racism, sexism, like all kinds of political concepts too, they might be more aware and more educated than previous generations too. So they're juggling that as well. Yeah, they might be more educated than we thought. But anyway, I added things like their actual context, like where they're spending their time. So they're spending their time among sports teams. They're driving, they're cycling, they're taking public transportation, they're at an after school job or a weekend job, they're with their crew of friends. So that's sort of the context that they live in. And then other contexts, they might now be using substances, things like that. So those are contexts like they might not have had before. So it might be under the influence of substances by this age, whether we like it or not. I mean, just think back to ourselves and our friends and family and stuff like that. So
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
offered drugs and alcohol by the time I was in like ninth grade. So yeah, it happens.
I was in the DARE organization, and
Oh,
or yeah, and
I
was
remember that for
straight
sure.
edge. Um,
oh, so straight edge.
Dye added kind of platform relationship to and usage of social media um, as a category, as a situation and context.
And she remembers Dare.
Um,
I love those t-shirts.
I don't know. You call it a gender neutral boyfriend girlfriend. What's the word for that? Lovers,
Partner?
partners. Yeah, lovers, partners. They might be having first partners for the first time,
Mm.
second time, third time. Who knows? So, all right, cool. So they have a lot going on. High school juniors have a lot going on. Let's just move on to the goals and motivations. So beyond our product and service, beyond a game that we might design for them, what motivates a high school junior? We'll take a couple minutes.
Mhm. Mr. Beast. Love that. Good. Whoever had that is awesome. I even love Mr. Beast. Oh, good choice. Good job. Good job.
All right, Amy, what did you add?
Oh, I was like friends learning. I don't think they really care about learning as much, but some of them do. I cared about learning. Finding but I was in like musicals. I was a theater geek, so like I cared about musicals more than I did about learning, let's be honest. But I'm learning about a lot of stuff. Anyway, finding life after high school, fitting in, belonging, love. I'm really in the kids' minds. Yeah.
All right, Ken, what did you add?
I said status because all things flow from status.
Mhm.
Financial returns, money. Crush's impression because I feel like that always ends up causing people to be motivated to do something or other to get their crush's
Mhm.
attention or not. College admissions offices because at that age, that's who you're at a certain path, that's who you're trying to get the attention of.
Yep.
And then anonymous Discord users because impression 2.0, 3.0 online and what causes you to want to aspire to be someone. I should also add like probably athletes and then Mr. Beast because that dude can fill up the Mall of America in like one afternoon off of a tweet.
For sure.
Yeah. 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 So I added, getting out of the house, sex related things, either with themselves or with others. And then social media status. So anonymous Discord users, basically, this is stuff that we didn't, as high school students, we didn't have to deal with, but students of today do. Their appearance / identities, trying on different appearances, different identities, things like that.
Yep.
Yeah, and if they were overachieving or have a plan to go to college, they're definitely thinking about college. And if they're not, they're thinking about, besides that, being in a band or running away or who knows, doing something adventurous. So yeah, there's a lot going on, definitely, with their goals and motivations.
Yep.
Okay, pushing ahead here to fears and frustrations. So what keeps a high school junior up at night? What does a bad day look like? I think the reason why we ask this for persona stuff is because, a product or service is supposed to help people, right? Or solve their problems. And so if we get into what are these people's problems, then the solution presents itself, I guess.
Mhm. Yep.
All righty, what do we have here?
Yeah.
Amy, what did you?
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll go because I was going before. Hormones, having sex, divorce, perhaps, not knowing themselves, parents, climate change, fears about the future. Or like, will I have, what will the climate be like when I'm older and have kids? That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I added give them managing their own moods, bad sleep patterns. So whereas before their parents maybe were able to force them to go to sleep and have enough sleep hours, at this age, they may not. So they may just be making poor decisions about that. So frustrations because of bad self-care, bad sleep patterns, poor decision making, poor executive function can cause a lot of frustration. Definitely divorce. Yep. Or just realizing that your parents and family members are not perfect and you know, or might be fighting or struggling or whatever. So all that stuff. Yeah, yep. Was it just me and you, Amy, that added to this one? Or did either Ken or Di add?
I don't know.
I didn't get to add yet.
Okay.
Or I mean, like I just switched to desktop, so
Oh,
here
okay.
on out, I'll be able to contribute, like on the board.
Did Ken step out for fears and frustrations?
He might have.
Okay.
He said he would be right back, so.
Di, would you add anything to fears and frustrations? Yeah, opportunity fears.
Not immediately at the top of my head.
Okay.
Oh, Ken just came back.
Welcome back.
All right, Ken, we filled out fears and frustrations. What keeps a high school junior up at night? What does a bad day look like for them? So all the things.
Yep.
Everything keeps up at night. Okay.
Oh, hold on.
I wish poor executive function
Uh,
caused me to have anxiety as a kid.
What were you having anxiety about when you were growing up, Ken?
It probably had to do with juggling too many after school programs.
Mm,
yeah.
Yeah. And just which college was gonna accept me.
mhm.
And
They
I
all
think-
accepted you.
not all of them, but
They all loved you.
and then yeah, I think knowing oneself. Also I agree the climate is definitely, I didn't put that, but climate is definitely a big
Yeah.
concern these days for young people. Like what is the world they're going to be able to exist in?
Yeah, so you could see right here, like how a game or a product or service can help. I mean, obviously we don't have the answer or the solution, but these are the problems or concerns that our product or service can help with.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, last chunk here is tasks and tactics. What does a high school junior do to accomplish their goals?
Right.
I'm gonna you can come back in a couple minutes.
Okay. Hmm.
All right, Amy, which one of these are yours?
Bottom right-hand corner,
Mhm.
one, whoever put Adderall, I was like, oh, Xanax. You know, that got me through some time. So let's see. I put out hang out with friends. I also was like stare off into space because like they're like dreaming and thinking about stuff. Therapy. They might be doing after school programs like a fellow thespian here. Yep, Die or Team Lexapro. So I put Xanax in here too. So that's what I put down. There are a lot of ideas here. I love this. Ooh, I like ChatGPT, the answer to the questions.
All
Yeah.
right. Ken, which ones were yours?
I pray, put that in
Mhm.
there with the hopes that faith still plays a role in outcomes. Chat GPT, the answers to the questions. Seek guidance if guidance counselors are available, for example. Although guidance takes many forms, guidance counselors came to mind. Seek Beyonce/Taylor Swift advice if you cannot seek guidance counselors. What would Beyonce do? Adderall. Anything else here? Yeah, those were the ones that I had added.
Yeah, the kids probably use a lot of social media now to learn and to cope and to get things done more than we did. I added things like Alateen meetings. I personally did a lot of Alateen meetings as a teenager, junior, senior. Was exposed to religion for sure. And then I added more of the negative. I added like things like sports scouts, music, their favorite bands. I know that like musicians and bands are very influential in the teenage years. There's that. But I also added some of the negative things like getting into fights, acting out, eating disorder,
Hmm.
you know, drugs, those kinds of things. Those are tactics to accomplish their goals, which is like coping with emotions, coping with sensations, coping with all, you know, all of those things. It does accomplish their goals. I'm not saying that they're the right way to accomplish their goals, but you know, certain goals like getting attention, calming down, not feeling so bad, not feeling so awkward, numbing themselves, those kinds of things. Those are the things they do until they learn better. So here we are. So here is you know, our attempt at sort of painting a portrait of a high school junior, very generic, obviously, very archetypal. It wasn't meant to really describe any particular high school junior, but just to get a flavor of who we might be serving with a cool game about ethics and technology. Ethics and technology didn't pop up a whole lot, but we see like social media definitely plays a role, and like identity and, you know, a high school junior's like basically posture towards the world does come up. So those are like opportunities where a game about ethics and technology might be able to pierce their world. So yeah, so it's 1:45 right now. We could definitely, you know, work on maybe one other, but if we're happy to be focusing on a high school student as our kind of end user, we could stop there or maybe talk a little bit more about like another persona.
Oh. Ken, I like adding that quote at the top for the high school.
Oh yeah, yes, we need to add a quote. Like we should all try
Life.
to add a quote.
So
I'm
no,
afraid
Ken.
what it's gonna say, but
No, Ken added the Ferris Bueller like quote. Light moves pretty fast. That's true. That might be the good quote. Thank you, Lee, for facilitating that.
sure.
Um, you know, so you know, I think this brainstorm is really great for us to get into that mindset. Like I think we knew what the mindset is around a junior, but I think it's like this is adding a lot more flavor and color to who this person is. And so, I don't know if we have enough time right now for us to go into another persona right now, but what we might, Lee, I want to talk to you, like, I'm gonna try to give you a call later to ask what you think, what the next steps might be for another, archetype.
We should actually one more thing is we should also make it clear that this is like a typical maybe American teenager, and we didn't maybe think about what life is like in South America and Europe and Africa, in Asia. It could be very different. So this is probably your typical American high school student that we are all familiar with, but like a high schooler in Singapore, I don't know, it could be quite different. So
Mhm. Yep, that is very true. We have to keep that in mind. So we are designing for a more Americanized experience for right now. Thank you. I'm gonna share my screen now. Thank you again. So I think for the rest of our time today, that what would be helpful is let me just make this full screen. Is keeping in mind this high school junior that we have. And also we talked about, a lot of these things touch upon like tech and loneliness, mental health, the fears and frustrations they might be experiencing, all the tasks, all the thing that they're doing. They're probably not thinking about their privacy data, data and rights, and technology and in general. But that's probably not even remotely close to that. But what I'm thinking about is, given what we are seeing here, and if we are seeing like taking this archetype and being like channeling this archetype of a high school junior, what types of content would they like? What's the Venn diagram between this junior and the content that they would want to consume? And that is where this question comes in of, we already thought about that, but like, could we brainstorm for a few minutes about like what kinds of content would be interesting to them when it comes to all of the things that we just looked at? So, and I don't have a lot of questions here because this is actually coming from the game design architecture, and there's not a guide there. So this is kind of an open-ended question, is like, what content should we or could we provide for this junior to meet the goal? Maybe this is linked together. Okay. I'm just thinking out loud here. It's like, maybe we think about like, what is the goal we're trying to do with this junior, and then content and mega goal are connected. I'm just thinking out loud here, but the content and the goal at the end of the day is, there's 3 different things that show up in the game design architecture. So they said, are we teaching them something, or are they learning something? Are they exploring or sharing? Or are they testing? Are we trying to test them or demonstrate mastery? Maybe that might be good to circle on before we talk about the content. So what do you all think? Teach, learn, teach, explore, or test?
The first 2 mega goals are calling out to me: teach, learn, explore, and share. And I'm also thinking aloud right now, like as we were wrapping up that archetypes round, at first I was like, maybe that's good. Like maybe we don't need another archetype. And then reflecting on it further, it was like, oh, like if we're going back to the Jesse Shell book and like, where are you playing this? And this is just an idea I'm floating out there. If it's the classroom, could it be like a teacher in a US civics class, right? Who's like, and like that could be a secondary archetype. And like they're in conversation, or they're facilitating or teaching or exploring ethical identities, right? Or like these trade-offs around privacy and identity and such. So just floating out there some things that were some dots that were slowly connecting for me, like just in the last like 7 minutes of doing this exercise.
Right, right. Yeah.
And yeah, big +1 to Ken around the notion of exploring.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like that period is marked so much by discovery, and I think as it relates to kind of tech and ethics prompts, there may be some degree of limited, if not exposure, then limited kind of comprehension in that arena. So like exploring kind of areas feels like I want to say safer, that's probably the wrong word, but just like more immediate opportunity for understanding, for deepening understanding.
Hmm. I would agree, looking at these three. My thinking I'm thinking about is what I'm thinking about is that we're not, what we're doing is not telling them, we're engaging them. We want to engage them and be like, what do you think about this? Because they're creating their own identities right now, being like, what is your identity, or what do you think about the use of this data and the rights that happen? And through that, we could touch upon all the different pieces of the course. For example, how powerful platforms are, right? Another one is like generative AI and what we think, like our values and thoughts. I think what's coming up for me is like this, as I'm talking, is like helping them figure out what their values basis is when it comes to this work. So. Big one, learning comes from dialogue and sharing and exploring. Okay. All right, so we can agree on explore and share. I'm going to make this bold. The values and choices when moving through the matrix of life. So with that said, with like the 8 minutes that we have left, maybe if we spend 3 minutes or so, on putting in what kind of content would we want to put in to, if we were helping these folks explore ethics and tech when it comes to, their lives. You can feel free to put ideas down.
What section is this going in?
Oh yeah, sorry, we're going into, do you see,
Oh, okay, gotcha. What
left.
is the content?
Yeah,
Yep,
what is the content? And you see, what is the
Gotcha.
content in mega
Yep.
goal?
Gotcha.
So those are the three, yeah. So put it underneath what's the content. Yeah, I just assumed that you were following along with my screen, but that was not a good assumption. Okay, if you all can finish your thoughts in here, add your final thoughts, we're gonna do a little bit of sharing and then close out. Hey Di, do you have any like ideas that you put in here that you want to share about?
Sure, yeah. I just lost my tab here. One moment. One I wrote would you rather ethical trade-offs. It's more flippant, but if we like propose two different ethical scenarios or like two different trade-offs, you know, like are you, I don't know, like trying to acquire users on this tech platform or like something else, or like, I don't know, just different ethical scenarios, and then offering a choice. And then students are potentially like talking through the pros and cons of different ones
Hmm.
and like why they would choose that, or you know, what things could they be missing. That's more flippant. Another one that I was just about to add is it's actually, it's based on this Jodi Cantor tweet. She's a New York Times reporter who like
Mhm.
helped write Me Too and such. And I think about this tweet a lot. Like, always ask yourself who writes the stories, who benefits from the stories, who is missing from the stories. So could there be something there around the prompts of like, who benefits from this certain decision, or who is missing from this
Mm.
particular product or something like that?
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
kind of like opening up the space for exploring blind spots.
Love that. Love that, Di. Could you add that as a specifically that into a note in here?
Yes, we'll do that.
Thank you. Hey Ken, do you have what do you add in here?
So I had added that language around like scenarios on policing encounters, privacy rights, and kind of digital freedoms, almost like what,
Mhm.
you know, as so much of encounters ends up online, just, but also as approaches for policing shift to, you know, be more identity capturing, kind of how are teens wrestling with that. I thought about classroom essay writing, citations, and plagiarism, and where kind of the responsibility of leveraging platforms, AI platforms comes in. I thought about just digital activism more broadly, whether that's protecting oneself from dox attempts or thinking about kind of mechanisms for gaining control of one's digital identity, or just being out there and making sure that one's brand is protected in the midst of doing that their work. I thought about tech waste and global supply chain as a way to kind of tie into the ethical underpinnings of a technology-centered future, absent considerations for the global precarity of that future. And then just digital freedoms, kind of tied to digital activism, I guess. But just kind of what are more expansive understandings of one's rights, of one's possibilities. How does that show up? You know, digital twins, or thinking about kind of ways we exist in online spaces for greater agency, greater control. Yeah.
Hmm. There's so many expansive things that we could talk about, and I appreciate the wide array of all the things that you just shared. Lee, do you have a moment to just like a minute to share your thoughts if you have any?
The only one I added here was spot the fake.
Okay.
Just trying to think of like a goal for a game. that was only one that I came up with. I know in previous conversations I was like, oh, what's your personality? Like, what's your personality type? I still think that's a good idea. I'll add that here. But the only other one I have for now is like spot the fake. There could be something pretty fun about, yeah.
You're thinking like the deep fakes?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
AI.
Because like celebrities are now in the crosshairs of deep fakes, and celebrities are so influential in teens. So maybe there would be some kind of cool game
Okay,
related to that.
great. Yeah, please do add the personality test in here too. Yeah. Because that could be an output tier too. So Okay, so to close up for today, thank you all for moving this along. I feel like we made a lot of progress as far as like and narrowed down to like now we have a person. Now we're like, what kinds of content? What is our goal that we want to do? So we want to explore. We want to look at like what content we could be talking about. What I'm going to ask you all to do is take a look at all of this pieces of content and maybe I'll probably send this out on Monday, but if you wanted to, I'm gonna take some of these votes that are up here. If you want to put like an idea, like your votes next to the kinds of content that you like the most. I'll send this out on Monday too, but prior to our meeting next week, if you can put a vote or two next to the ones that you like the most. And so next week, I believe, is our final week together for this version of the action cycle. What we're going to be doing is then really talking about the experience and diving deeper into what we think the experience is from a larger perspective. And like at the end of the day, we're starting to get some content, we're starting to see some goals that are emerging. And the experience is in the center here. So we're going to do some brainstorming around the entering behavior, the exiting behavior, what's coming, what we're coming in with, and what do we want people to do afterwards, and then all the components in between. So I'll be in touch on Monday. But in the meantime, let me know if you have any questions for where we're going. And I don't know what we're going to end up with at the end of the session, but we'll have a discussion at the end of like, where do we want to go from here as a group, and how do we want to present in a bigger way. I'm also communicating with a Stanford team that's leading this work, like Kathy Kopic and et cetera, being like, where should we be ending and how are we presenting this information? So I'll be bringing that with us next week. So
We're
thank you.
gonna design the game next time. Yes, it's gonna be done in
Yes.
2 hours.
Yes. Let's play the game for real next time. And maybe we'll do like, let's do the game next week and finally, and then we'll, celebrate our like work that we've done. Like we've come a long way from like, what are we doing to we have something. So we're trying to develop. So we're really honing in on this. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you for being here on this journey with me and everyone here. Yeah. Have a good afternoon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for hosting.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.